This is an English translation of Gazze Risalesi, a poem written in Turkish by the poet Cahit Koytak. With the poet's agreement, we have called it in English, Despatches to my Gazan Son. Cahit Koytak has dedicated his poem to Professor Ahmed Davutoglu, the present Prime Minister of Turkey. Despatches to my Gazan Son was written in 2008 during the events in Palestine of that year. Cahit Koytak began writing his poem on the 10th day of the conflict. Yusuf, my Gazan son, I belong in the company of old Palestinian poets. No matter that I write my poems in Turkish, since 10 days ago, along with every other poet in the world, awake and warm-blooded, I have been Palestinian too. All of a sudden, my songs and qasidas of the past 40 years have begun to smell of Palestinian soil. Not blood, gunpowder, tears, no, nor rage, hatred, vengefulness. Don't get me wrong. For 10 days now, it is Jacob and Joseph, Moses and David, Jesus and Mohammed, who have filled my mind, my heart, and all my being, as if I too were made of Palestinian soil. Reality is knowledge compatible with its object, say the philosophers. And intuition, they say, is emotion which embraces reality. Yusuf, my son, if these definitions are correct, my intuition tells me that since 10 days ago, the only information, the only news that is true and trustworthy is carried on the wind like an inspiration to poets and to pregnant mothers. Yes, every day in Palestine, the murderers of the prophets kill 1,000 times. Every day they kill Moses 1,000 times, Jesus 1,000 times, Mohammed 1,000 times. Every day they burn Abraham with phosphorus bombs. Yet still in Palestine and all over the world, every day since 10 days ago, hundreds and thousands have been born. Yusuf, my Gazan son, grief speaks the same language all over the world, but so too hope is a language spoken across the globe. Just so, hate speaks the language of death and love the language of life all over the world, in every epoch of human history. I belong in the company of the world's old poets. I thought I could decipher the language of the grass, the birds, the stones. What presumption, what disappointment. Yet whenever I try to speak in human words of the children of Gaza, my voice begins to tremble and grows hoarse. If you only knew how I have struggled to draw forth words from my mouth that can serve the pure and perfect voice of the human heart in face of the bombed schools and the bombed homes and the hospitals, this ruination of human conscience. If I could only give true voice to that fine and fragile sound, that delicate chord that connects humanity to God. Delivering it to my tongue's tip is like placing a thread in the eye of a needle. And even if I found the words that fit, I cannot achieve the tone required, the precise timbre, and my words emerge like any old patchwork of rags to be grabbed at to staunch the wounds of Gaza. And more even than that, I find it hard to reach with my poetry's voice the children who live elsewhere on the earth. I fail because so many wear headphones in their ears. I don't know which rock songs they listen to, praising freedom, democracy, and songs against war. Let them just keep listening, you will say. It's ironic, isn't it? Maybe it belongs. Some herd sheep and goats to graze in the mountains. Let them carry on. It belongs. Some are at the theatre or in amusement parks, some at school, and some are begging in the streets, and some sell handkerchiefs, some simit, and some are singing hymns in the temple. But so many children are just sitting at computers, only a few in quest of knowledge and skills, etc. All of this is ironic, isn't it? But maybe it belongs. Maybe it is necessary that a game remains just a game. But while they occupy themselves with their studies and works and games, I think of you, Yusuf, you and your brothers, and of the child murderers and the mother murderers in Gaza, your poor country, who do not let you study and work and play. And I, as poet of the grief of the world, I want to ask myself, we, the whole of humanity, and the earth's population of jinns and angels, and Satan the rebel and the oppressor, and Almighty God, what play are we performing in this theatre? What play through the centuries? What is this play, besmirched all over in blood? All these dead babies, all these dead children, all these dead mothers, and all these audiences watching in silence. This silence which fills the heavens and besmirches paradise and hell beneath the earth and purgatory between underground and overground with blood. In which play are we performing? In which play again and again? In which play written in hell? Yusuf, my son, I am an old poet of Asia Minor. Yet, as I have said, I couldn't make my voice heard even among the world's children, even among the kids of my own neighborhood. Yes, my poems could not make themselves heard among our kids, these poems which seek to climb through the highlands of language to its very summit, carrying dreams as huge as mountains and ideas hanging over me like avalanches, and always climbing doubled up, always short of breath. When, with a poet's selflessness of soul, I open my mouth and say great ideals of humanity, the wind blows my words away, blows them away from the tanks, panzers and human safaris, away from prying eyes and missionary entrapments, to those happy days when Eve and Adam made love freely in the smell of each other, and heaven wandered not in the sky but on the earth. And then the wind hurls my voice yet further, thousands and thousands of years beyond, until it is seeded with the melodies of the tree of knowledge. And yet further the wind hurls my voice, thousands and thousands more years into the future, when humanity has divested itself of its tribal inheritances with their trails of blood, and put away its once indestructible state with its impregnable castles, inviolate institutions, brave armies, and ornamented flags, from the times of tales and legends on the other side of the mountain of Kaf, and reaches at last an ultimate maturity in which the world is one complete community, and we are citizens of one world. I say hundreds and maybe thousands of years, but don't let this frighten you. In the halls of eternity, it is said, 1,000 years are but a day, and 100 years, it has been said, are perhaps just a dawning moment. And whatever 100 years means in the halls of eternity, so creation means the same. In God's eyes, in divine reckoning, God's quickening of man's clay took less than a second. And what the years have taught me, you must learn too, that the great ideas, the great plans of creation, so as not to fall on humanity like an avalanche, may come by ways unused and unforeseen, descending the hillsides from the far high mountains by roundabout paths. You have suffered so much, Yusuf, my son. You have suffered too much. Palestine is too small for such suffering. Ask for the world, for all of the earth, to be without walls, without barbed wire, without mines, and without guns, for all of us. You have suffered so much, so be the first to sing this song. Lay your ear to the ribs of the future. Be the first to announce this mighty ideal, this rhythm of the heart and of the mind, and transform it into a manifesto. Say, a world, a world, a world without borders. Say, the world without walls and free of arsenals. Say, a world without guns, without guards, for all of humankind. You have suffered so much, yet you can do this. We let you suffer so much, yet you can transform everything you touch, all and everything, into pure gold. Every idea, every thesis you published or never divulged, you can turn into a heavenly manifesto. You have suffered so much, yet you can transform your agony. Those tragic tunes on the lips of your brothers and sisters dying on the pavements or under the ruins, while asleep in their cradles or clustered round their skipping ropes or catapults, you can transform all this into the greatest oratorio of humankind. You can transform the prayers of the poor, chanted in all the houses of God, fermented in heart and throat like a storm, growing wave upon wave, and sweeping as it goes all the tanks and panzers, the rockets and mortars, and all those guns away from the mind, the heart, and the tongue of man, away from the warmongers, the arms dealers, the gangs, states, castles, prisons, and concentration camps, kings, emirs, long-serving presidents. Yes, you can gather all of them into a hurricane of roses. You can transform all griefs, all prayers, all cries into a flood of rose petals, covering the dead of Gaza in their long, unbroken sleep, and feeding the hungry, reconciling the wounded, sheltering the homeless, loving the unloved, unifying earth and sky in the hearts of man through a season of roses, a rose prosperity, a rose community, a rose people. You have suffered so much, yet you can do this. We let you suffer so much. No one in the world more than you deserves, in the name of all of us, to talk both with God and the dark angel. Speak out and yield no ground. Ask for the earth, in the name of all the children of the earth. Speak out and yield no ground. Demand the earth, Yusuf, my Gazan son. Don't settle for some new concentration camp with State of Palestine inscribed above its gate. This word, state, this need for a flag, all these pastures of bones sprayed with blood, don't let them dazzle you. Don't let them deprive you of your dreams. The long grass and thorns in the graveyards here are sustained by the blood of the young. Yusuf's on one side, Joseph's the other. Their lives surrendered each side of a fraught border, but lying now side by side in peace. Do not forget this. And still at those borders, where together the dead on either side sleep in peace. Vast sums are spent on war each year to prevent embrace between the living. All those resources committed to damned guns and licensed murderers and assassins could feed the world starving for 10 years and reduce the world's suffering by half. could triple the resources of love and add to mercy fivefold, could transform half the police stations into theatres and half into libraries, and could convert half the prisons into movie halls and half into workshops. In the end, it makes no odds who holds the gun. Always the only winner is the arms dealer. It is simply no use resorting to the gun again and again to realize your ideals and dreams. Force corrupts and rots, and reduces everything to vicious and mean concerns and rusty instruments with nowhere to run to except the scrapyard. It is the arms dealer and the hired killer who say, attack, for instance, is the best form of defense, adding from habit, to the point of extermination, if possible. They are only being logical, and some say realistic. But let us expel them at last. Let us push aside these masters of death. Let us cast from our minds these death dealers. And before we ask of humankind, Yusuf, my son, don't you think that first we should ask the wolves and the birds, the stones and boulders, the trees, the waters and the mountains, the mice and elephants, the ants and the long grass, and all the other occupants of the world, nature herself, in short, the whole of creation. The guest who destroys and burns down the dwelling of his host, leaving a bloodbath behind, commits a crime that has no place in nature's law or in the laws of heaven. It dishonors humankind and defies God's will. Yusuf, my son, we must defend the way of civilized humanity. While there is still time, we must fling this savagery into the past and clean from the mind of man the definitions and terminologies of the gun, this primitive approach to making history, this competition in the art of killing, these systems and institutions of weaponry and war. We must eliminate the evil guns and armed institutions, the secret and dirty organizations, the professions and schools which teach how to kill, the gross ideals which honor death. Let us turn death's tide and create a free zone, demanding of friend and foe that they take part in a true way of human being. For the pursuit, defense, and treasuring of peace is our plain duty. The need for peace is so obvious it almost blinds us. Yet it requires of us to be as pure as truth, and to show high courage and absolute sincerity. No doubt people can die in this cause too, but to die or to live, to die today or in 50 years' time, of course they are not the same, the difference is real. But each of those deaths can be forgotten with equal speed if they fail to add to the beauty of wholeness, the beauty of humankind, the beauty of life, the beauty of death. Do not allow them to put their limits upon our dreams, neither our dreams nor our ways of thought. What has befallen you now is an opportunity for you on behalf of all of us. Do not assent to, do not allow the soul of man to be besieged. Do not acquiesce, do not let it envelop you, either within your being or your life without. Do not allow yourself to be sealed off as if in a coffin, to be kept away from other souls, other lives, other plays, other scenes, from great dreams, great thoughts, great stories, great adventures. Mankind has suffered so much at the hands of saviors. Do not allow anyone to rescue you. Do not allow them to turn you into some liberated lamb, and your land into some paddock of liberated lambs. Do not allow them to keep making you pay a price for dying at home and in your own bed. Do not allow them to treat you as an object. Do not allow them to buy and sell you as their property, the Savior and his men, the President and his men, and other little Caesars, small-sized gods, and their men made minuscule. You love the land of your birth. I understand this. The land which gives you suck until you die, and will take you to her bosom past that end. Of course you must love her. It doesn't need saying. You must love her, of course, as much as you love your mother, sometimes even more passionately, with even more ardor. I understand this. And you may have to die to protect your mother from abuse, or to defend the honor of your motherland and the dignity of humankind. In doing so, you will be defending who you are, your meaning, your blood. And you must give your life for that without hesitation. There is no need to ask why. Love of mother, devotion to motherland, pride in nation, respect for flag. That's fine. Yusuf, my son, that's all right. But everything has its measure and its limit. There's no place for frenzy or furore, and everything deserves your respect, and everything in its place has its own beauty. But if there are those who would want to make a charade of this, then a religion, then a technique for herding people into a corral of servitude, then Yusuf, say this, not I, gentlemen. Count me out. I'll not be part of this show. For we cover up our betrayal of ideals by making them holy or turning them into myths. Let the whole earth be your motherland, Yusuf the Gazan, O my son. Let the sky be your flag. And let your nation be all the children of Adam and Eve, who know how to walk their road with heads held high, like your ancestor Abraham. So do not look back. Having crossed that sea whose waves parted, having passed through that fire whose flames drew back, do not now resort to some new golden calf, or silk, linen, or cotton icon, or shoddy unicorn, or phony phoenix. After all these sacrifices, ask for the whole world, not just for Palestine, but for a world without borders, for a world made solely of earth and sky, for all the world's children, and for all the world's poor. Perhaps it is my old age that makes me repeat my words. At my age, people repeat the same old thing many times, as if in spite of Heraclitus, like river water washing over the same stepping stone, always moving, yet always with the same sound. I shall repeat myself too, Yusuf from Gaza, my son. I shall say again to you, ask for a world with no walls, no borders, for a world whose only weapons are the mind, heart, and tongue, and where rose petals are the only bullets fired. Ask for a world without exploitation of man by man. Ask for a world where man is not tyrannized. Ask for a world ruled not by tyrant and tagut, but by God. For despite all, the heart of the present age may be large enough to hold this passion, this aspiration. The spirit of the present age may yet have sensitivity enough to be crowned with this halo, this burden. The maturity and knowledge of good, which man can learn from our long history, may yet be enough to realize this holy purpose. I say, a world where no man dominates another. This is important. Ask, my son, for a world in which souls meet and talk to one another, and share their work and break bread together, where like flowers they share the sunlight, the water, and the moonlight, but make no attempt to dominate each other. Do what the prophets did. Speak with a low voice and say you don't want power, so that the value of power should fall through lack of a buyer in street and stock market. Do not ask for power. Do what the prophets did. If you have to die for the sake of freedom, leave no heir behind you except God. Neither Melech, Lord, nor King, neither Kaiser nor Sultan. You have suffered, and we made you suffer. This is the test for all of us. But you, Yusuf, stand at the forefront. It is for you to start out on this great venture, which faces the whole of humankind. And if a mountain blocks your path, listen, this is important. Do not seek to conquer the mountain's crags like an enemy. Just walk around its feet, picking the flowers on its slopes. It is better that you know in advance that they will say, it is all a dream. It is all a fancy, they will say. It is all a utopian fantasy. Listen to everyone until the end, but don't say, I hear you. Just carry on dreaming. First, they'll make you an object of ridicule, then the madman of the village, and then they will turn you into a black sheep. Don't worry. Carry on dreaming. There are those who dream only at night and in their sleep, and forget their dreams in the waking day. But beware of those who dream in the daytime. It is they who can change themselves. It is they who can change the world. Humankind places its good dreams to the fore and its nightmares to the rear, while walking the road that leads to the greatest dream of all, the most real, the most rich of color. Did not God, the great artist, breathe his soul into the raw clay to create an apprentice, a disciple, to add his own high thoughts, their images and harmonies, to the great poem of the earth? The High Master, he who created life from unlife, light from darkness, blew on the clay from his own soul, and as that first cell he made began to lighten with life, it started to dream. It grew, dreaming good dreams. It grew, and then divided, and divided, and divided. And as it divided, the dream grew and grew, increasing so immensely that it couldn't be contained in the one heaven, and so descended to the earth. And there being now the greatest and the most exquisite and complex of dreams, it passed beyond the realms of growth and became mind, ready to enter time. Weeping with the many, lamenting, vowing revenge, Yusuf, my son, burning the photos and effigies and flags of the enemy in the public square. I cannot say to those who want to share your pain, they should not do it. For it dishonors the name of all mankind that we leave the children to die in Gaza. To lead the most righteous and upright life is not enough, so long as we leave the children to die in Gaza. Reality is a burning coal. It scorches. Hands cannot bear it without burning. Only the surest mind can bear reality without burning away, without letting go. As soon as the embers kindle and begin to glow, right away most handlers drop reality to the ground, then stamp on it, clenching teeth and fist. Sometimes they allow the fiery, burning feelings, the fiery, burning words to pour away and scatter, which, had they only held on, might have resolved themselves into an idea, a solution, a panacea. Their anguish is so great, I cannot say they shouldn't do it. Slaughter is unbearable. But that response may lead the murderers to see rather the helplessness of suffering than the strength that comes from being in the right. And it may give more pleasure to Israeli civilians who, with monitors and cameras, go for picnics at night, illuminated by the flames of Gaza under its bombardment. And it may legitimize the silence of the more remote spectators, as well as those close in, namely the other sons of Yaqub's house, your stepbrothers from Egypt, Jordan, and Hejaz, who look for water to douse the flames of their shame. I think, Yusuf, my son, that the real victory is not to curse or swear at your enemy, or burn his image or his person, whichever of these you find. Real victory is to open the gate of time, open the gate to freedom and virtue, open it to everyone without discriminating. Open it even to your enemy, open it, if possible, with him. Take life to your enemy, not death. This way, enmity will be the loser, not your enemy, not you, not anyone else. Let amity be the victor. Let concord resurrect the dead. This wind that brings both grief and hope, let it bring my voice to you, whispering and singing through the olive and the fig and the date trees. This wind that carries heartbreak and hope, let it also bring my voice through the beautiful gardens where the children and the mothers of Gaza wander without fear or concern. This wind, the soul of time, this wind, the breath of Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, the breath of Abu Salma, Mahmoud Darwish, Kafka, Roni, and Edward Said, let it pass. Let it pass through the hearts of the children of Palestine, scattered around the world and the heavens, and bring my voice to you. This wind, passing through Yaqub, Yusuf, and Bunyamin, who are slaughtered in Sabra and Shatala, and passing through Jacob, Joseph, and Benjamin, who are burned in Auschwitz, let it bring my voice to you. This wind, let it not reach and rest only with Palestinians, but pass through the Yusufs of Bosnia, who are buried in their thousands in Srebrenica under the eyes of civilization, even under the supervision of civilization. And pass through the Indians uprooted in the United States and the Armenians lost on the roads of Asia Minor. Let that wind pass through and hurl their ashes and their dust into the faces of the murderers and the instigators of crime, and those who cover it up and obscure the evidence. Let that wind pass through and bring my voice to you. I rummage through the books, the pages of time, the archives of earth and heaven, the fingerprints of death on dusty shelves, to find a place in time that matches the mass murders in Gaza. I cannot say these crimes, this savagery, have no precedent. Man's record is unending and most terrible. Since the misdeeds of Cain, his forefather, he has always slaughtered brethren, neighbors, partners, anyone who reminds him of his weakness, his injustices, his cowardice. Only yesterday, 1 million Yusuf were killed in Iraq. I don't forget. How can I forget? Before that, 1.5 million were slaughtered in Algeria. And I do not forget the Balkans, Vietnam, Chechnya, Hiroshima. How can I forget? How can we forget? Other Yusufs, those recently released from the bottom of the well, can I ever forget them? The ancestors of Malcolm X, the ancestors of Martin Luther King, the forefathers of Obama, can I ever forget any of them? Even if I do forget, I shall be reminded straight away by my grandson, Mehmet Eren, who became 2 years old last month, to establish a freer world with his peers who live in Gaza. And if he can't find the words, his father or mother will remind me on his behalf of his friends who are black, of his friends slow-eyed, or who come from the great western prairies, or far east, or far north. Let it go through all of them, this crazy wind. And let it be sure to pass through President Obama, and particularly around his heart 40 times, before it enters his mind. And then let it leave him and enter America to bring that nation to its senses. And when it comes to its senses, let the MGM lion shed its skin, and like a stray cat, let it yowl 3 times, crying out in its great pain on behalf of mankind, as if in sorrow for all these happenings. And let the wind pass on from that faraway celluloid, wiping its eyes with a handkerchief of conscience, and wander, moaning and weeping, in the streets of Gaza, over the mass graves, and among the ruins of Fallujah, Darfur, and Kabul, carrying my voice to you. Carrying my voice among the unseasonable dead, in their shrouds, their coffins, and graveyards. Carrying my voice among sound-minded madmen who do not recognize differences of flag and homeland. Carrying my voice among the eternal wanderers, exiles, and vagabonds. Carrying my voice to you. Miles away from moldy books, moldy mentalities, moldy museums, miles away from the mummies and the tombs, let the wind bring my voice to you. Just as when a fire or disaster strikes the neighborhood, you'll find poets jumping out into the streets in their pajamas, having to share this agony. So now, this poetry-loving wind has taken a crazy old poet's heart for a walk in his slippers and pajamas through the streets of Gaza. A wind that tries to make sense yet cannot hold back the tears as it wanders in and out of this plain song for plain people who also struggle inward and outward. Let this wind bring my voice to you, Yusuf of Gaza, my son. While death goes to work early in Gaza, here in Istanbul, this most beautifully named of all cities, this softest-hearted and most tearful city in the world, the eyes of the morning open like wounds made with a nail on the cross of this new day. And when evening falls again, after hours of distant shelling, another twilight spreads like a scab on the dying conscience of man. In the places where death still plies its trade with tanks, rockets, and armored masks, life is rehearsing. It will prepare a way for righteousness and open highways to far horizons to make our venturing sure. From fear of the wolf, the God of Zion hides his flocks of sheep in the barn, and they huddle there close and poky. When there is no violence left to commit, I fear the day will come when he'll grab and strangle the whole flock one by one and eat them there by the door. Just so, the same Baal of Zion, God of this concentration camp which we call Israel, will one day declare that yet more protection is required and shall make them eat their own manure. Show compassion for those sheep, Yusuf of Gaza, my son, and for the sake of the Almighty, the Shepherd of the world, try all the ins and outs of sorrow, both known and unknown. Take pity on them. Have mercy upon them, as Yusuf, son of Yaqub, had mercy on his brothers who transgressed, and gave them shelter. In that oldest and most beautiful of stories in the Quran, the story of Yusuf. I'm not saying let's shuffle the cards and share out the world all over again. Of course not. We need to say clearly what we mean. Let us summarize, Yusuf, my son, what it is we want to say to all humanity. Let everyone put back on the table those things which you have taken from the earth and from heaven, or, let's say, taken for safekeeping from earth and heaven, the things with which you were entrusted, the tasks which you were entrusted to fulfill. Let's have everything on the table. Whoever in existence has arms or wings, or eyes and eyebrows, or heart and soul, and especially whoever has lungs, let him replace them. Let him return them to God's service. And all together, in brotherhood, in company, let's sit down afresh at the table of existence, whose generous and merciful host keeps offering his plenty to the feast of human life.